I spent 15 years raising a boy I thought needed me. He called me Dad. And the whole time, he was killing me. 1 milligram at a time. The night my furnace exploded in a -30 blizzard, the technician texted me from my own basement. "Sir, this isn't a malfunction. Someone wants you dead. There's a sealed room behind your wall, and someone's breathing inside. Hey there, we are so glad you are here." Before we dive in, please consider liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and letting us know your location in the comments. It helps us grow this community. Important note: this account features fictionalized aspects intended for entertainment and educational exploration. Any resemblance to actual individuals or settings is unintentional, yet the underlying message carries significant value worth reflecting on. My name is Walter Price. I am 70 years old, and for 15 years, I believed I understood love. I believed I could read the gratitude in a young man's eyes, sense the sincerity in his voice when he said goodnight, and trust the boy who chose me as his father. I was wrong about all of it. But before I tell you about the basement, about the sealed room and the breathing behind the wall, I need to take you back to where this began. Back to the moment I opened my heart to a stranger and invited destruction into my home. It was a Sunday morning in October of 2009. The leaves along Blaisdell Avenue had turned gold and copper, and the air carried that particular Minnesota sharpness that tells you winter is only weeks away. I was 65 then, recently retired from the bench after 30 years as a district judge in Hennepin County. I had spent 3 decades sentencing men to prison, deciding the fates of families, and I believed I understood human nature better than most. Helen, my wife of 38 years, had encouraged me to volunteer at St. Andrew's Lutheran Church in Edina. They had a mentorship program for young adults aging out of the foster system, kids with no family, no direction, no one to call when the world felt too heavy. I thought it might give my retirement purpose. That first Sunday, Pastor Lindgren introduced me to a young man sitting alone in the fellowship hall. He was 20 years old, thin, with dark hair that fell across his forehead, and eyes that held a quiet sadness. I recognized immediately the look of someone who had been alone too long. His name was Kevin. Kevin Price, eventually, though that came later. He stood when I approached, extending his hand with a politeness that felt almost old-fashioned. Firm grip. Direct eye contact. A voice soft but steady. He told me he had grown up in foster care since age 3. Never adopted. Aged out at 18 with nothing but a duffel bag and a ged. He was working nights at a warehouse, taking community college classes during the day, trying to build something from nothing. I liked him immediately. There was something about his composure, his quiet determination, that reminded me of the young men I had seen in my courtroom who chose the harder right over the easier wrong. Helen noticed it too. She invited him to dinner that following Thursday, and by the end of the evening, she was packing him leftovers and writing down the address of a better apartment complex near the college. Over the following months, Kevin became a regular at our table. He helped me rake leaves in November, shoveled our driveway after the first snowfall, sat with Helen and me on Christmas Eve when Natalie, our daughter, was stuck in Chicago because of a canceled flight. He never asked for money, never asked for anything really except time. Our time. Our presence. Our family. By spring of 2010, Helen looked at me one evening after Kevin had left and said what I had been thinking for weeks. "Walter, that boy needs a father. And I think you need a son." She was right. Natalie was grown and independent, living her own life in Chicago. The house felt quieter every year, and Kevin, this earnest, hard-working young man who had never known a family, he filled a space I did not even know was empty. I filed the adoption papers in June of 2010. Kevin was 21. He did not need to be adopted legally at that age, but he asked me to do it. Standing in Judge Morrison's chambers, I watched Kevin sign his new name. Kevin Price. He looked up at me with tears in his eyes and said, "Thank you, Dad. You have no idea what this means to me. I hugged him. Helen hugged him. We took photos on the courthouse steps, all three of us squinting into the summer sun, and I felt like the luckiest man in the world. Looking back now, I wish I had asked one simple question. Why did a 20-year-old boy with no family choose me, of all the people in this city, to call Dad? The years that followed were, by every measure I knew, the best of my retirement. Kevin threw himself into life with a hunger I had never seen in anyone. He enrolled full-time at the University of Minnesota, studying mechanical engineering with a focus on heating and cooling systems. He graduated in 2014 with honors. And Helen and I sat in the third row of Northrop Auditorium, clapping until our palms stung. He got a job immediately. A good one. Senior technician at a commercial HVAC firm in Bloomington. Within 3 years, he was managing projects, overseeing installations for office buildings and hospitals across the Twin Cities. He was smart, methodical, precise. His supervisors loved him. His clients trusted him, and every Sunday without fail, he sat beside me in the third pew at St. Andrew's, head bowed in prayer. In 2016, he met Brittany Collins at a church potluck. She was 25, a kindergarten teacher with a quiet laugh and gentle hands. They married the following spring in the same sanctuary where I had first seen Kevin sitting alone 7 years earlier. I walked him down the aisle. Helen cried the entire ceremony. Natalie flew in from Chicago and gave a toast at the reception that made everyone laugh. It felt like our family was complete. Lucas was born in 2019. A healthy boy with Kevin's dark hair and Brittany's wide blue eyes. I held my grandson for the first time in the maternity ward at Abbott Northwestern, his tiny fingers curling around my thumb, and I wept. Helen stood beside me, her hand on my shoulder, whispering, "We did good, Walter. Look at what we built." That was March. By May, Helen started complaining about headaches. At first, she dismissed them. Tension, she said. Probably her sinuses. Spring allergies in Minnesota were brutal. But by June, the headaches came daily. Then, the fatigue. She would fall asleep in her armchair by 7 in the evening, too exhausted to finish her crossword puzzle. Her appetite vanished. She lost 8 pounds in a month without trying. I begged her to see Dr. Hansen. She went through blood panels, imaging scans, even a referral to a neurologist at the Mayo Clinic. Everything came back normal. The doctors suggested stress, perhaps early stages of chronic fatigue. They prescribed rest and vitamins. Kevin was wonderful during that time. He stopped by our house 3, sometimes 4 times a week, bringing Helen homemade soup, adjusting the thermostat so she would be comfortable, checking the air filters. He had installed a new furnace for us the previous winter as a Christmas gift. "Top of the line," he said, "most efficient model on the market. You and Mom will be warm all winter." He always asked how Helen was feeling. Always watched her carefully when she answered. I thought it was concern. I thought it was love. By September, Helen could barely climb the stairs. Her skin had taken on a grayish pallor. She forgot words mid-sentence. One morning, she could not remember the name of our street, the street we had lived on for 26 years. I scheduled another round of tests. The doctors found nothing. On the evening of November 8th, 2019, Helen and I sat together on the couch, watching the evening news. She turned to me, her eyes suddenly sharp and focused in a way they had not been in months. "Walter," she said, her voice low, "I need to tell you something about Kevin. I found something on his phone last week. A number he calls late at night. I think he is talking to someone in prison." I stared at her. "What do you mean, prison?" She shook her head slowly. "I do not know yet, but something is wrong. I can feel it. I have felt it for years. Promise me. You will look into it. Promise me." I promised. I told her we would figure it out together in the morning. She squeezed my hand and said, "I love you, Walter. Whatever happens, remember that." We went to bed at 9:30. I read for a few minutes, then turned off the lamp. Helen's breathing was soft and steady beside me. I fell asleep listening to it, the way I had for 38 years. When I woke at 6:15 the next morning, Helen was still. Her hand was cold in mine. Her chest did not rise. I called 911, but I already knew. The paramedics confirmed it. Cardiac arrest in her sleep. The medical examiner found nothing suspicious. A 67-year-old woman with months of declining health. These things happen, they said. I am sorry for your loss. Kevin organized everything. The funeral, the flowers, the reception at St. Andrew's. He stood beside me at the casket, his arm around my shoulders, tears running down his face. I have never seen him cry like that before or since. He held my hand during the eulogy and whispered, "I am so sorry, Dad. She was the best mother I ever had." And I believed him. God help me, I believed every word. The months after Helen passed blurred together like watercolors left in the rain. I moved through our house like a ghost, touching her things, sitting in her chair, listening to the silence where her voice used to be. The crossword puzzles stacked up on the coffee table unfinished. Her reading glasses stayed on the nightstand where she had left them. I could not bring myself to move anything. Kevin called every day, sometimes twice. "How are you eating, Dad? Did you take your medication? Do you want me to come over tonight?" His voice was steady and warm, an anchor in the fog of my grief. Brittany brought Lucas over on weekends, and the sound of a toddler's laughter filled rooms that had gone too quiet. But by the spring of 2021, I could no longer pretend I was managing. I forgot to pay the electric bill 2 months in a row. I left the stove on overnight. One morning, I drove to the grocery store and sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes because I could not remember why I was there. Kevin sat me down one evening in May. His face was serious, his hands folded on the kitchen table. "Dad," he said gently, "I think it is time we talk about you moving in with us. Brittany and I have been discussing it. We have the space. Lucas would love having his grandpa around. And honestly, I would feel better knowing you are not alone out here." I resisted at first. I did not want to be a burden. This house held 40 years of memories. But the truth was, the loneliness was eating me alive. By June, I had packed 2 suitcases and a box of photo albums, and Kevin drove me to their home in Edina. It was a large colonial-style house on a quiet street, lined with elm trees. 4 bedrooms, a spacious kitchen, a finished basement that Kevin used as his workshop. He had prepared the guest room on the main floor for me. New mattress, fresh paint, a small bookshelf stocked with thrillers and biographies he knew I liked. It felt like home almost immediately. There was only one rule Kevin insisted upon. The basement was off limits. He explained it casually the first week, almost as an afterthought. "There is asbestos insulation around some of the old pipes down there, Dad. The previous owner never remediated it. It is not dangerous as long as you do not disturb it. But I would rather you stayed upstairs. I have my work equipment down there, tools, chemicals. Not safe for anyone without proper gear." It made sense. I had no reason to question it. The basement door stayed closed, and I stayed on the main floor, content with my room, my books, and my grandson's company. But something was wrong with me. The forgetfulness that had started before I moved in grew worse. I would lose track of conversations mid-sentence. I walked into rooms and could not remember what I was looking for. My hands developed a tremor that made holding a coffee cup an exercise in concentration. Some mornings, I woke with headaches, so fierce I could not open my eyes. Kevin took me to see Dr. Patel at the Edina Family Clinic. After a battery of cognitive tests, Patel sat us down with a careful expression. "Mr. Price," he said, "your symptoms are consistent with early-stage cognitive decline, possibly Alzheimer's. We will need to monitor this closely." Kevin nodded gravely, his hand on my shoulder. "We will take care of him," he told the doctor. whatever he needs. And so it was decided. I was an old man losing his mind, and my devoted son would manage my care. Kevin organized my medications. He made my tea every evening. A special blend, he said, chamomile and valerian. Good for sleep. Good for the brain. I drank it gratefully every night. Christmas of 2022 was the first time Natalie had visited since Helen's funeral. She flew in from Chicago on December 23rd, and the moment she walked through the door, I felt something in my chest loosen. My daughter, my brilliant, stubborn, fiercely independent daughter. She hugged me for a long time in the hallway. "You look thin, Dad," she whispered. "Are you eating enough?" I assured her I was fine. Kevin takes good care of me. But over the next 2 days, I noticed Natalie watching Kevin with an expression I could not quite read. She asked me questions when we were alone. "How often do you forget things, Dad? When did the tremors start? Has anyone else examined you besides Dr. Patel?" On Christmas night, after Lucas was in bed and Brittany had gone upstairs, I heard voices from the kitchen, low and tense. Natalie and Kevin. I could not make out the words, but Natalie's tone was sharp, accusatory. Kevin's was calm, measured, the way he always sounded, the way a man sounds when he has rehearsed his answers. The next morning, Natalie was gone. Kevin told me over breakfast, his face apologetic. "She left early, Dad. Said she met someone in Chicago and wanted to get back. You know how she is. Always running off." I frowned. "She did not say goodbye." "You know, Natalie," Kevin said with a small shrug. "She has always been impulsive. She will call when she is ready, but she did not call. Not that day. Not that week. Not that month. I dialed her number dozens of times and got voicemail every single time. Her mailbox filled up and stopped accepting messages. I asked Kevin to try reaching her. He said he had. No response. By February, I was frantic. "Something is wrong," I told Kevin. Natalie would not just disappear. Kevin sat beside me, his hand on my knee, his eyes full of gentle concern. "Dad," he said softly, "I did not want to tell you this, but Natalie and I had an argument on Christmas night. She said some hurtful things about our family. About me. I think she needs space. She will come back when she is ready. You know how stubborn she is." I wanted to believe him. And God help me. I did. Because the alternative, that something terrible had happened to my daughter, was too painful to consider. So I let it go. I let her go. Some nights, lying in bed with the house silent around me, I would hear sounds from below. A dull thud against something solid. A faint scraping, rhythmic and slow. Once, I could have sworn I heard a voice. Muffled. Distant. Like someone calling from the bottom of a well. I mentioned it to Kevin the next morning. He smiled and poured my tea. "Old pipes, Dad. This house is 40 years old. Everything creaks when the temperature drops." And every single time, I believed him. 13 months passed. 13 months of tea every evening, doctor visits every 6 weeks, and sounds in the basement I trained myself to ignore. 13 months of Kevin smiling at me across the breakfast table, asking how I slept, whether the headaches were better, whether I needed anything from the pharmacy. 13 months of slow, invisible poison. By January of 2024, my memory had deteriorated to the point where I kept a notebook by my bed. Names, dates, appointments, things I was terrified of forgetting. My hands shook so badly some mornings that my handwriting was barely legible. I had accepted it. Accepted that my mind was leaving me the way Helen had. Quietly. Without explanation. On the 14th of January, Kevin told me he had a project in Milwaukee. A commercial installation, he said. Big contract. I will be gone 3 days. Brittany is going to take Lucas to her mother's in St. Paul for the weekend. Will you be all right alone? I waved him off. I am 70 years old, Kevin. I can survive a few days by myself. He smiled. That smile. Of course you can, Dad. I will leave the thermostat set to 68. If anything feels off, call me. I left extra tea in the blue canister above the stove. He hugged me at the door, his hand lingering on my shoulder. I love you, Dad, he said. I will be back before you know it. Brittany loaded Lucas into the car an hour later. She paused in the doorway, looking at me with an expression I could not quite place. Something tight around her mouth. Something almost like guilt. Take care of yourself, Walter, she said quietly. Then she was gone. The house settled into silence. I made dinner, watched the news, drank my tea, and went to bed early. Outside, the Weather Channel had been warning about an Arctic front pushing down from Canada, temperatures dropping to -20 overnight, possibly colder with wind chill. I pulled an extra blanket from the closet and fell asleep listening to the wind howl against the windows. The explosion woke me at 2:17 in the morning. Not an explosion exactly. A deep, percussive bang from somewhere below the house, followed by a metallic shriek that vibrated through the floor and up into my bones. Then, silence. Complete, absolute silence. I lay in the dark, my heart hammering, waiting for the furnace to restart. It did not. The steady hum that had been the background rhythm of every winter night in this house was gone, replaced by nothing. I sat up and immediately felt the cold. Not the gentle chill of a room cooling gradually, but a sharp, aggressive bite. The kind of cold that finds your joints and tightens around them. I reached for the lamp on my nightstand. It clicked on, which meant the power was still working. Just the furnace had died. I shuffled to the hallway thermostat, my bare feet flinching against the hardwood floor. The digital display read 51 degrees and dropping. I pressed buttons, toggled the system off and on. Nothing engaged. No click, no hum, no rush of warm air through the vents. The system was completely dead. My first instinct was to call Kevin. I pulled my phone from the charger and dialed. 1 ring. 2. 3. Voicemail. His voice, smooth and professional. You have reached Kevin Price. Leave a message, and I will return your call. I tried again. Same result. A third time. Nothing. His phone was off or he was ignoring it. At 2:30 in the morning during a blizzard, with the temperature dropping a degree every few minutes, I was alone. By 3 o'clock, the house had fallen to 44 degrees. I could see my breath forming small clouds in the hallway light. I layered on 2 sweaters, wool socks, a winter coat. I boiled water on the stove and held the mug between my trembling hands, but I knew the math. At this rate of heat loss, the house would reach dangerous temperatures by dawn. Pipes would freeze. The cold could become genuinely life-threatening for a 70-year-old man with deteriorating health. I needed professional help. I searched on my phone for emergency HVAC services, my fingers clumsy and slow on the screen. The first 2 companies I called had automated messages. After hours. Leave a message. The third was a 24-hour emergency line. North Star Heating and Cooling. A woman answered. Her voice alert. Despite the hour, I explained the situation. Furnace failed. No heat. -30 outside. I am 70 years old and alone. She told me a technician would be there within the hour. Hold tight, sir. Keep warm. We will get someone to you. Sam Rivera arrived 43 minutes later. I watched his white van pull into the driveway through the front window, headlights cutting through the swirling snow. He was younger than I expected, maybe early 30s, with a dark complexion and a close-trimmed beard. He wore insulated coveralls and carried a large tool bag and a flashlight that could have lit a stadium. He shook my hand at the door, his grip firm and warm. Mr. Price? Sam Rivera. 8 years in the trade. Let us get you some heat back. I liked him immediately. There was a competence about him, a calm confidence that put me at ease. He started outside, trudging through knee-deep snow to examine the external unit. I watched from the window, hugging myself against the cold that had now dropped the house to 39 degrees. After 15 minutes, he came back in, stamping snow from his boots. "External unit is fine," he said, pulling off his gloves. "No electrical issues, no mechanical failure out there. Whatever happened, it is internal. Your furnace, where is it located?" "The basement," I said. He nodded, already moving toward the hallway. Then he stopped, noticing the closed door at the end of the corridor. "Down there?" "Yes. But I should tell you, my son says there is asbestos around some of the old pipes. He does not want anyone down there without protective equipment." Sam gave me a measured look. "Sir, I have a respirator in my van, and I have worked around asbestos before, but I need to access your furnace to fix it. Without going down there, I cannot help you. And at this temperature, you do not have a lot of time." He was right. At 39 degrees and falling, with a blizzard raging outside and no other options, Kevin's warnings about the basement seemed less important than surviving the night. "Go ahead," I said. "Do whatever you need to do." Sam retrieved his respirator and a small handheld device from his van. "Carbon monoxide detector," he explained. "Standard safety equipment. Every job." He opened the basement door. Cold air rushed up from below, carrying a smell I could not identify. Something metallic. Something stale. Sam clicked on his flashlight and descended the wooden stairs, his tool bag over one shoulder, his footsteps creaking on each step until they faded into silence. I stood at the top of the stairs, peering down into the darkness. Minutes passed. 5. 10. The house was so quiet, I could hear the snow hitting the windows. My breath came out in small white puffs. I gripped the door frame and waited. 15 minutes. No sound from below. No footsteps. No clanking of tools. Just silence. I was reaching for my phone to call down to him when it buzzed in my hand. A text message from Sam's number. I opened it, expecting a simple update. A part number. A question about the system's age. Instead, 6 lines of text that changed everything. "Sir, do not come down here yet. Call no one. I need to show you something first. This is not a malfunction. Someone has deliberately tampered with your furnace. Someone wants you dead." I stared at the screen, read it again, and again. My hands were shaking, but not from the cold. Not anymore. Then a second message appeared. "There is something else. A wall down here that should not exist, and my CO detector is going off behind it. Sir, I think there is someone on the other side." I stood at the top of the basement stairs, my phone clutched in both hands, reading those messages over and over as if the words might rearrange themselves into something that made sense. Someone wants you dead, someone on the other side. My legs did not want to move. Every instinct told me to call the police, to stay where I was, to wait for someone with authority. But the cold was pressing in from every direction, and Sam was down there alone. And the words on my screen were so impossible that I needed to see for myself. I gripped the handrail and descended. The basement stairs were steeper than I remembered. Each step groaned under my weight. The wood old and slightly damp. The air grew colder as I went down, but it was a different kind of cold than the house above. This cold carried something else, a metallic sharpness that coated the back of my throat. A staleness that spoke of sealed spaces and stagnant air. At the bottom, Sam's flashlight beam found me immediately. He was standing beside the furnace, a large gray industrial unit against the far wall. His face was pale, tight around the jaw. In one hand, he held the carbon monoxide detector. Its screen glowed amber, and a small red light pulsed steadily at the top. "Mr. Price," he said quietly. "Come here. I need to show you something." I crossed the concrete floor toward him. The basement was larger than I had imagined. Unfinished concrete walls, exposed ductwork running along the ceiling, metal shelving units lined with boxes and tools. Kevin's workspace, neat, organized, labeled. Everything in its place. Sam crouched beside the furnace and pointed his flashlight at the side panel, which he had already removed. Inside, I could see the maze of components, burners, coils, the heat exchanger, ductwork branching upward like metal veins feeding warmth to the house above. "Look here," Sam said. His voice controlled and professional, but I could hear the tension beneath it. He pointed to a cylindrical metal component. "This is your heat exchanger. When the furnace runs, natural gas burns inside this chamber. The combustion gases, including carbon monoxide, are supposed to vent safely outside through the flue." He shifted the flashlight. "But look at this." I leaned closer. Along the surface of the heat exchanger, I could see them. Small holes. 5 of them, drilled in a precise line, each one no larger than a pencil tip. The metal around them was clean. The edges sharp. These were not caused by rust or age or wear. They were deliberate. Surgical. "Someone drilled these," Sam said flatly. "On purpose. These holes allow carbon monoxide to leak directly into your ductwork instead of venting outside. Every time this furnace runs, CO is being pumped into your living space." My mouth opened, but nothing came out. I stared at the holes, my mind trying to reject what I was seeing. Sam stood and pointed toward the ductwork above. "And it gets worse. See these dampers?" He indicated metal flaps inside the main duct trunk. They control airflow direction. Normally, they distribute heat evenly throughout the house, but these have been manually adjusted. He pulled one open with his screwdriver, revealing the angle. They are redirecting most of the contaminated air into one specific branch. He traced the duct with his flashlight beam. That branch leads directly up to the main floor, to the guest bedroom at the front of the house. "My bedroom," Sam nodded. "Your bedroom, sir. Based on the wear patterns and soot accumulation, this has been running for months, maybe longer." I reached out and grabbed the nearest shelf to steady myself. The tremors, the headaches, the confusion, the memory loss. Not Alzheimer's. Poison. Someone had been poisoning me in my sleep for months, and I had blamed it on old age. How long? I managed. Sam checked his detector readings again. Based on the oxidation around the drill holes and the buildup inside the exchanger, I would estimate 2 to 3 months of active exposure, maybe longer at lower levels before that. He looked at me directly. "Mr. Price, if you had gone another 2 or 3 weeks without calling me, we would not be having this conversation. The levels would have reached fatal concentration." I felt my knees weaken. I tightened my grip on the shelf and forced myself to breathe. Kevin, who managed the furnace. Kevin, who came down here regularly for maintenance. Kevin, who told me the basement was dangerous. Kevin, who made my tea every night. Sam was already moving away from the furnace, his flashlight sweeping across the basement floor. "But that is not all I found," he said. "Come here." He led me to the far corner of the basement, past the water heater and a stack of storage bins. There, against the rear wall, was something that should not have existed. A wall. A section of concrete block wall, roughly 8 feet wide, and reaching from floor to ceiling. But unlike the rest of the basement walls, which were poured concrete darkened with decades of moisture and dust, this section was clean. Newer. The mortar between the blocks was lighter in color, the surface free of the cobwebs and grime that covered everything else down here. Sam ran his hand along the edge where the new wall met the old. "You can see the seam," he said. "This was added later. Maybe 2 years ago, based on the curing. Someone built a wall here, enclosed a section of the basement." He held up his CO detector and moved it slowly along the wall's surface. The amber screen flickered, then jumped. The red light pulsed faster. "Elevated readings," he said. "Whatever is behind this wall, it is getting the same contaminated air. Look." He pointed his flashlight at the ceiling where a small duct, no more than 4 inches in diameter, disappeared into the top of the new wall. Someone ran a vent line into this space, a sealed room. In my son's basement, with poisoned air being piped into it. Sam knelt and pressed his ear against the concrete blocks. He held up one hand, signaling me to be silent. I watched him, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my teeth. 5 seconds passed. 10. Then Sam pulled back. His face had changed. The professional calm was cracking. His eyes were wide. "Mr. Price," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "There is someone alive behind this wall. I can hear them breathing." I stepped forward and pressed my own palm against the cold concrete. Beneath my hand, the blocks felt solid, immovable. But I closed my eyes and listened past my own thundering pulse, past the wind screaming against the house above, past the silence of the dead furnace. And there it was. Faint, barely perceptible, a thin, rasping sound. The desperate rhythm of lungs struggling for air in a space that was slowly being filled with poison. Someone was alive in there. Sealed behind concrete and steel, breathing contaminated air in the dark, and I had been living above them for 2 years without knowing. Sam pulled back from the wall and looked at me. His composure was slipping. I could see it in the way his jaw clenched, in the slight tremor of his flashlight hand. "We need to get through this wall," he said. "Right now." He scanned the basement quickly, his beam sweeping across Kevin's neatly organized shelves. There. A sledgehammer leaning against the far wall beside a toolbox. Sam grabbed it, tested its weight, and turned back to the concrete blocks. "Wait," I said. My voice sounded strange to me. Distant. "Should we call the police first?" Sam met my eyes. "Sir, whoever is in there is breathing contaminated air. My detector is reading 35 parts per million on this side of the wall. Behind it, the levels could be double or triple that. If we wait for police, if we wait even 30 minutes, they might not be breathing at all by the time someone opens this up." He was right. I nodded. Sam positioned himself in front of the newer section of wall, raised the sledgehammer, and swung. The impact was enormous in the enclosed space. The sound ricocheted off every surface, sharp and violent. A crack appeared in the mortar between 2 blocks. He swung again. A chunk of concrete fell inward, revealing darkness behind it. 3 more swings. 4. 5. The blocks began to crumble and shift. Sam was working methodically, targeting the mortar joints where the wall was weakest. Pieces fell outward onto the basement floor. Dust billowed into the air, mixing with our breath in thick white clouds. After the 7th strike, a section roughly 2 feet wide gave way, and I saw what was behind the concrete blocks. It was not just a wall. It was a false front. Behind the decorative layer of blocks, maybe 3 inches deep, stood a door. A real door. Steel. Industrial gray. The kind used for fireproof storage rooms or bank vaults. Heavy-gauge metal, with a reinforced frame, bolted directly into the concrete foundation, and across the front of it, securing it shut, were 4 padlocks. Massive ones. Each a different brand, each mounted on a separate heavy-duty hasp welded to the door and frame. These were not hardware store locks. They were commercial grade. The kind meant to resist bolt cutters, saws, drills. The kind meant to ensure that whatever was on the other side would never get out. Sam lowered the sledgehammer, breathing hard. He stared at the door, then at me. "Jesus," he whispered. I stepped forward. My feet moved without my permission, drawn toward that door as if pulled by something I could not name. I raised my fist and knocked. 3 times. Hard. The steel barely resonated. It was too thick, too solid. "Hello," I called out. My voice cracked on the word. Can you hear me? If someone is in there, please, make a sound. Silence. Nothing but the faint whistle of wind from somewhere in the ductwork above. I knocked again. Harder. Both fists this time, pounding against the cold metal until my knuckles ached. Please, if you can hear me, answer me. We are going to help you. Silence stretched. 5 seconds. 10. I pressed my ear against the steel, feeling its bite against my skin. At first, all I could hear was the blood rushing in my own head. Then something shifted on the other side. A faint scraping, something moving against a hard surface. Fabric, maybe. Or skin against concrete. Then a cough. Weak and wet, like air being forced through lungs that had forgotten how to work properly. I held my breath. And then a voice. It was barely a voice at all. More like a whisper, pushed through broken glass. Thin. Fractured. Barely human. But it formed a word. One word. That split my world in two. Dad. My knees buckled. I grabbed the edge of the steel door frame to keep from falling. My vision went white around the edges. The basement, Sam, the broken wall, all of it disappeared. There was only that voice. That impossible, broken voice that I knew. That I had known for 38 years. Since the day a nurse placed a screaming infant in my arms at Abbott Northwestern Hospital and I became a father for the first time. Natalie. Dad. Is that you? Weaker now. A whisper inside a whisper. Please. Please be real this time. I was on my knees. I did not remember falling. My hands were flat against the steel door, my forehead pressed against it, tears streaming down my face and into my collar. My daughter. My Natalie. Not in Chicago. Not with some boyfriend. Not ignoring my calls because she needed space. Here. In this basement. Behind steel and concrete. And 4 locks that were never meant to be opened. 15 feet below my bedroom. For 2 years. Natalie, I choked. It is me. It is Dad. I am here. I am right here, sweetheart. A sound came from the other side. A sound that I will hear in my nightmares until the day I die. Half sob, half scream, muffled and raw. The sound of someone who has lost all hope suddenly finding it again in the cruelest possible way. Because hope, when you have been abandoned in darkness for 700 days, must feel like its own kind of torture. Dad. Her voice broke apart completely. I thought you forgot about me. I thought you stopped looking. I never stopped. I lied. Because the truth, that I had believed Kevin's lies and let my daughter go without a fight, was too monstrous to say out loud. Not in that moment. Not with her voice dissolving into sobs on the other side of a steel door I could not open. Sam was beside me, his hand on my shoulder. Mr. Price, we need to get her out. I am calling 911 right now. I nodded, unable to speak. Sam already had his phone to his ear, his voice calm and clear as he reported the address, the situation, the carbon monoxide levels, the locked door, the victim behind it. I stayed on my knees, my hands pressed against the cold steel, whispering through the metal, I am here, Natalie. Help is coming. We are going to get you out. Just hold on. Her breathing was audible now. Shallow, ragged, too fast, and too thin. She was fading. The CO had been working on her for months, years maybe, weakening her body one breath at a time while the man who put her there smiled at me over breakfast. I fumbled for my phone with shaking hands. I needed to call someone. Needed to understand how this was possible, how my daughter had been sealed inside a wall in my son's basement while I lived above her. Drank tea in his kitchen, told him I loved him good night after good night after good night. I dialed Brittany's number. She was at her mother's in St. Paul. She would know something. She had to know something. The phone rang once. Brittany answered before the second ring. Her voice was high and tight, as if she had been expecting this call, as if she had been dreading it. "Walter?" she said. "What is wrong?" I forced the words out through a throat that felt like it was closing. "Brittany. Natalie is in the basement. She is locked behind a wall. She has been here for 2 years." 3 seconds of silence. The longest 3 seconds of my life. And then Brittany spoke. 5 words. 5 words that confirmed everything and destroyed whatever was left of the world I thought I knew. "Oh God. You found her. Oh God. You found her. Not what is happening or what do you mean or found who." She knew exactly who was behind that wall. She had always known. The rage that surged through me was unlike anything I had felt in 70 years of living. Not the measured anger of a judge delivering a harsh sentence. Not the quiet frustration of an old man losing his memory. This was primal. Volcanic. The kind of fury that makes your vision narrow to a single burning point. "You knew," I said. My voice did not sound like my own. It was low. Flat. Dangerous. "You knew my daughter was locked in your basement." Brittany was crying. Gasping. Choking sobs that made her words come out in fragments. "Walter, please. You do not understand." Kevin said. "It was temporary." He said Natalie was trying to take everything. He said she was going to put you in a home and steal your assets. He told me he just needed to keep her out of the way for a few weeks while he sorted things out. "A few weeks," I repeated. "It has been 2 years, Brittany. 2 years. My daughter has been sealed behind concrete in your basement. For 2 years. I know. I know." Her voice dissolved into a wail. "I wanted to tell you. Every single day, I wanted to tell you. But Kevin said, if I talked, if I told anyone, he would hurt Lucas. He said he would make it look like an accident. He said he had done it before and he would do it again." The words hit me like ice water. Done it before. Helen. He was talking about Helen. "Walter, please believe me," Brittany continued, her voice ragged. "I did not know about the carbon monoxide. I swear. I did not know he was poisoning you or Natalie. He told me the room was heated, that he was feeding her properly, that she was fine. He said it was just until the money was settled. I believed him because I was terrified. I was terrified of what he would do to my son. I stared at the steel door. Behind it, my daughter was barely breathing. Poisoned air leaking into her lungs every second we stood here talking. And this woman, this coward who had served me dinner and smiled at me across the table and called me Dad, had known the entire time. "Did you tell Kevin the furnace broke tonight?" I asked, my voice cutting through her sobs. A pause. A terrible, damning pause. "He called me earlier," she whispered. "He asked me to take Lucas and leave before morning. He said something might happen tonight. He did not say what. I thought maybe he was going to move her. I did not think. You did not think." I said the words like a door closing. Permanently. "Because you never thought, Brittany. You let fear make you complicit in the torture of my daughter. And if Sam had not come tonight, Natalie and I would both be dead within weeks. Do you understand that? Your husband was going to kill us both." She was sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. "I am sorry. I am so sorry. Walter, please." I ended the call. My hands were shaking so violently I nearly dropped the phone. Sam stood beside me, his own phone held up, screen facing me. He had been recording. The audio icon pulsed on his screen. Every word of that conversation captured. "Evidence," he said simply. "She just admitted to knowledge of false imprisonment. That recording is admissible." I nodded, unable to form words. Behind the steel door, I could still hear Natalie's breathing. Thinner now. Weaker. Each exhale seemed to take longer than the last. I pressed my hand against the door again. "Natalie," I called, Help is coming. Stay with me, sweetheart. Stay with me. A faint sound. Something between a moan and a whisper. She was slipping. How long for the police? I asked Sam. He checked his phone. Dispatch said 10 minutes. That was 4 minutes ago. With the blizzard, maybe longer, the longest 6 minutes of my life passed in that basement. I spent them with my forehead pressed against that steel door, talking to my daughter through 4 inches of metal, telling her about Lucas, about the garden she used to love, about the trip to the North Shore we took when she was 12 and she caught her first fish. Anything. Everything. Just words. Just my voice letting her know she was not alone anymore. Sam checked his CO detector periodically. The readings on our side of the wall had climbed to 42 parts per million. He made me put on his respirator for 2 minutes, then took it back. We shared it, trading breaths of clean air while Natalie had none. Then I heard it. Faint at first, then growing. Sirens. Cutting through the howl of the blizzard. Growing louder. They are here, I told Natalie. Hold on. They are here. Footsteps above. Heavy boots on hardwood. Voices calling out. Down here. Sam shouted up the stairs. We are in the basement. We need bolt cutters and paramedics. Now. 2 officers descended the stairs within seconds. The first was a tall Asian man with a calm intensity about him. Officer Chen, Minneapolis Police Department. The second was a woman. Younger, with red hair pulled back beneath her cap. Officer Briggs. Behind them, 2 paramedics in dark blue uniforms carrying equipment bags and a collapsible stretcher. Chen surveyed the scene quickly. His eyes moved from the broken wall to the exposed steel door, to the 4 padlocks to my tear-streaked face. He did not waste time with questions. Bolt cutters, he said to Briggs. She was already pulling them from a duffel bag. Sam stepped forward. Carbon monoxide levels behind this door are extremely elevated. Whoever is in there has been exposed for an extended period. Months, possibly years. You are going to need oxygen immediately. One of the paramedics, a stocky man with graying temples, was already preparing an oxygen tank and mask. The other was unfolding the stretcher. Briggs positioned the bolt cutters around the first padlock. She was strong, her arms braced wide, teeth clenched. The metal groaned. She adjusted, squeezed again with everything she had. The shackle snapped with a sharp crack that echoed through the basement. One down. The second lock was larger, a thick, stainless steel body with a hardened shackle. Briggs bore down, her face reddening with effort. Chen stepped in behind her, adding his weight. Together they forced the handles closed. The lock resisted for an agonizing moment, then gave way, with a sound like a bone breaking. 2 down. I counted each one like a heartbeat. Each snap of metal bringing me closer to my daughter. Closer to seeing her face, after 2 years of absence. Closer to a truth I was not sure I could survive. The third lock yielded faster. Chen had found the angle now, positioning the jaws precisely at the shackle's weakest point. One hard squeeze. A metallic pop. The lock clattered to the concrete floor. 3 down. The fourth was the largest. A massive disc lock with a shrouded shackle designed specifically to resist cutting. Briggs tried twice and failed. Chen took over, repositioning the cutters at a different angle. He braced one foot against the doorframe for leverage and pulled with his full body weight. For 5 seconds, nothing happened. Then a grinding sound. Then a crack. Then the lock split apart and fell. 4 down. Chen grabbed the door handle. He looked at me. Ready? I was not ready. I would never be ready. But I nodded. He pulled. The door swung outward with a low groan of hinges that had not moved in a very long time. And the smell hit me. A wall of it. Stale air, human waste, unwashed skin, mildew, and beneath it all something sweet and wrong that I would later learn was the scent of a body slowly consuming itself. The smell of starvation. I staggered backward. The paramedics pushed past me, flashlights raised, oxygen tank hissing. And in the beam of light that cut into that sealed tomb, I saw her, and I did not recognize my own daughter. The room was no larger than a walk-in closet. 8 feet by 8 feet of bare concrete, floor to ceiling. No window, no ventilation, except the 4-inch duct pumping poison instead of air. A single dead light bulb hung from the ceiling. The only light came from the flashlight beams cutting through the darkness. In the corner, a narrow cot with a stained mattress. No sheets, no pillow. Beside it, a plastic bucket with a lid. Against the opposite wall, a small shelf held dented cans, a water bottle half filled with something brown, and a stack of paper napkins. That was it. My daughter's entire world for 753 days. And on the cot, curled so small she barely seemed human, was Natalie. I would not have recognized her on the street. She was skeletal. Her arms were nothing but bone, wrapped in translucent skin. Her cheekbones jutted sharply beneath hollow eyes, ringed in purple. Her hair hung past her shoulders in matted tangles. She was not moving. For one horrible second, I thought we were too late. Then her chest rose, a shallow, shuddering breath, and fell, and rose again. The paramedics were already beside the cot. Morrison, the older one, pressed 2 fingers to her neck. Pulse is weak, thready, maybe 40 beats per minute. He turned to his partner. Start the oxygen, now. She fitted a mask over Natalie's face. The hiss of pure oxygen filled the room. Morrison clipped a pulse oximeter to her finger. Pulse ox at 70%. Carboxyhemoglobin is going to be critical. BP is dropping. We need to move. An IV line went into the crook of Natalie's arm, the needle sliding beneath skin so thin I could see every vein. Monitors beeped. Slow. Too slow. But there. I knelt beside the cot and reached for her hand. Her fingers were ice-cold and impossibly thin. I could feel every bone, like holding dry sticks wrapped in paper. I am here, sweetheart, I whispered. Dad is here. You are safe now. Her eyelids fluttered. Her eyes opened just enough for me to see the whites, yellowed and bloodshot. They moved toward my face, found me, stopped. Her lips moved beneath the mask. No sound. But I could read them. Dad. A tear slid from the corner of her eye. Her fingers twitched in mine. A squeeze so faint I might have imagined it. But she was in there. Damaged. Poisoned. Starved. But still in there. They lifted her onto the stretcher. She weighed nothing. Morrison later told me 85 pounds. My daughter, who once ran half marathons, weighed 85 pounds. They carried her up the narrow basement stairs, tilting the stretcher at an angle. I followed, my legs threatening to give out. Upstairs, the house was below freezing, frost on the windows. But the front door was open, red and blue lights flashing through swirling snow. They loaded her into the ambulance. I climbed in without asking. No one stopped me. I sat on the bench beside her, gripping the stretcher frame as Morrison worked. Officer Chen appeared at the doors. Mr. Price, we are securing the scene. We need to locate your son and daughter-in-law. Find them, I said. Find them both. The doors closed. We pulled away into the blizzard, sirens cutting through the night. I took Natalie's hand again. Looked down at the oxygen mask fogging with each breath. The IV lines. The monitors. My daughter, who had been dying 15 feet below me while I drank tea and watched television and thanked God for my loving family. I am here, I whispered. I am not leaving you again. Her fingers curled around mine. Just barely. But enough. Halfway to the hospital, Natalie's eyes opened wider. More focused. She turned her head toward me, and I could see the effort it cost her. Her lips moved beneath the mask. I leaned closer, my ear nearly against her mouth. "Kevin," she rasped. "Sand against gravel. He killed Mom. Same way he is killing you. Carbon monoxide. In the furnace. He told me." He laughed about it. I pulled back, staring at her. My chest seized. She was not finished. Her eyes found mine, burning, with an intensity that defied her broken body. "Dad." Her breath hitched. "His real name is not Kevin." I could not breathe. "His name is Kyle," she whispered. "Kyle Drayton. His father is Frank Drayton, the man you sent to prison in 2005. He has been planning this since he was 18 years old." The ambulance kept moving. The sirens kept screaming. But inside that metal box, everything stopped. The man I had raised for 15 years. The man I had given my name, my home, my love. He was the son of a murderer I had sentenced to 25 years. And every moment of the life we shared had been a weapon aimed at my heart. Hennepin County Medical Center rose against the pre-dawn sky like a fortress of glass and concrete. They wheeled Natalie through the emergency entrance, and I followed, stumbling through automatic doors and down fluorescent hallways that all looked the same. A nurse stopped me outside the treatment bay. "Family waits here, sir. We will update you as soon as we can." I sank into a plastic chair. My hands were still shaking. The clock on the wall read 4:52 in the morning. Less than 3 hours had passed since the furnace exploded. It felt like a lifetime. Dr. Anika Lindholm found me 2 hours later. She was a tall woman with silver-streaked hair and the steady gaze of someone who had spent decades delivering news people did not want to hear. She sat beside me, a tablet balanced on her knee. "Mr. Price, your daughter is stable. We have started hyperbaric oxygen therapy to flush the carbon monoxide from her blood. Her carboxyhemoglobin level on arrival was 41%. Anything above 40 is considered immediately life-threatening." She paused, letting that settle. "Beyond the CO exposure, Natalie is severely malnourished. She has lost approximately 55 pounds from what we estimate was her healthy weight. She is dehydrated, anemic, and showing significant muscle atrophy. There are also signs of vitamin D deficiency consistent with prolonged absence of sunlight." "Will she recover?" I asked. "Physically, with time and proper nutrition, yes. But prolonged carbon monoxide exposure can cause neurological damage, memory issues, cognitive slowing, mood changes. We will not know the full extent until she is stronger and we can run comprehensive testing." She placed her hand briefly on my arm. "Your daughter is a fighter, Mr. Price. The fact that she survived 2 years in those conditions is extraordinary." I pressed my palms against my eyes until I saw sparks. "Can I see her?" "Once the hyperbaric treatment is complete." "Another 4 hours. Try to rest." I did not rest. I sat in that plastic chair and stared at the wall and replayed every moment of the last 15 years. Every smile, every hug, every "I love you, Dad" that had come from the mouth of a man whose real name I had not even known. When the nurse finally led me to Natalie's room, the sight of her stopped me in the doorway. She was propped slightly in the hospital bed, oxygen tubes in her nose, IV lines in both arms. Her face was still gaunt, her skin still gray, but her eyes were open, and they were focused. And when she saw me, something in them broke open. "Dad," she whispered. I crossed the room and took her hand. It was warmer now. "I am right here." Tears spilled down her hollow cheeks. "I need to tell you everything," she said, "before I forget any of it. While it is still clear." "Take your time," I said. "I am not going anywhere." She closed her eyes for a moment, gathering strength. When she opened them, her voice was stronger, steadier. The voice of a woman who had spent 2 years rehearsing this moment in the dark. "Christmas Eve, 2022, she began. "I could not sleep. I went downstairs to get water around 2 in the morning. Kevin was in the kitchen. He did not see me. He was on his phone, speaking very quietly. But I heard him say one word that stopped me cold. She looked at me. He said, "Dad." "Not to you. You were asleep upstairs." He was calling someone else Dad. I stayed in the hallway and listened. I could only catch fragments. He said something about a timeline. Something about things being almost ready. And then he laughed and said, "He still does not suspect a thing." 15 years and the old man trusts me completely. My stomach twisted. I had been the old man. Trusting completely, Natalie continued. The next morning, while Kevin was out with Lucas, I went through his phone. He had a second one hidden in his toolbox in the garage. A burner phone. There was only one number in the call history. I wrote it down and searched it later on my laptop. It was registered to Minnesota Correctional Facility in Stillwater. She swallowed hard. I spent that afternoon researching. I found the visitor logs online. Kevin Price had been visiting an inmate named Frank Drayton every month for years. I looked up Frank Drayton, and I found your name, Dad. Judge Walter Price. You sentenced him in 2005 for second-degree murder. 25 years. I could not speak. Could not move. Then I looked up Frank Drayton's family records. He had a son, Kyle Drayton, born 1989. Entered foster care at age 3 when Frank was arrested for domestic assault. The timeline matched perfectly. Kevin's age. Kevin's background story. All of it. Kevin Price was Kyle Drayton, Frank Drayton's son. Her eyes bore into mine, and then I remembered something Mom said to me. 2 weeks before she died, she called me in Chicago. She said, "Natalie, I found something on Kevin's phone. A number he calls late at night. I think it is someone in prison. She was going to tell you the next morning." The room was silent except for the heart monitor. "She never got that chance," Natalie whispered. "Because Kevin killed her that night. The same way he was killing you. The same way he was killing me." I felt something shatter inside my chest. Helen had known. She had found the truth. And it had cost her everything. "What happened on Christmas night?" I managed. "After you found all this." Natalie's jaw tightened. I confronted him. "After you went to bed, I told him I knew who he was. I told him I was going to the police in the morning." She paused, and I saw her hands tremble. He did not panic. He did not yell. He just smiled at me. That same calm smile he always had. And he said, "You should not have done that, Natalie." He poured me a glass of wine, said, "Let us talk about this like adults." I was scared, but I drank it. I do not know what he put in it, but I woke up in that room, behind the steel door, in the dark. She was crying now, silently, tears tracking down her gaunt face. The first week, he came down every day. He told me everything, who he really was, what he had done to Mom, what he was going to do to you. He said his father had waited 20 years for this, that Kyle had been planning since he was 18, that every moment of those 15 years was a performance, a role he played perfectly until he could take everything you had. Your money, your reputation, your family, your life. A woman appeared in the doorway. Dark hair, charcoal blazer, badge on a lanyard. "Detective Maria Vasquez, Minneapolis Police," she said quietly. "I need to take your daughter's formal statement, but I heard enough from the hallway to tell you. Mr. Price, we have more than enough for multiple charges. We are going to find Kyle Drayton, and he is never going to hurt your family again." I looked at Natalie. At my daughter who had survived 2 years of hell because a monster wanted revenge for a sentence I had handed down 19 years ago. And I understood for the first time what Helen had tried to tell me on the last night of her life. Something is wrong. She had been right. And it had taken me 5 years to finally hear her. Detective Vasquez worked through the night. By the time the sun rose over Minneapolis the next morning, pale and weak through a sky still heavy with snow, she had assembled a timeline, a warrant, And a team. She found me in the hospital cafeteria, nursing a coffee I could not taste, and sat down across from me with her notebook open. "Mr. Price," she said. "Kevin Price, or rather Kyle Drayton, is not in Milwaukee. There is no commercial HVAC project there. We checked with every major contractor in the area. No one has heard of him." I stared at her. "So where is he?" "His car was found this morning at Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport. Long-term parking. He left it there sometime yesterday afternoon, before the blizzard hit. His phone has been off since approximately 6 p.m. last night. No credit card activity. No flight records under either name. He planned this," I said. "He knew the furnace would fail. He knew someone would come. He left before it happened." Vasquez nodded. "We believe so. He likely triggered the furnace failure remotely or set it on a timer. Then, he created distance. Made sure you were alone in the house when it happened. Because he expected me to die," I said flatly. "He expected me to freeze or suffocate from the CO before anyone found me. That is our working theory." Vasquez's jaw tightened. "But he miscalculated. He did not account for you calling a repair service in the middle of the night. He assumed the blizzard would keep everyone away long enough." I thought about Sam Rivera, about how close I had come to simply wrapping myself in blankets and waiting until morning. If I had waited 6 more hours, the CO levels in my bedroom would have done what the cold could not. Vasquez continued. "I have issued a nationwide warrant for Kyle Drayton. FBI Special Agent Torres is coordinating with federal authorities. We are monitoring airports, train stations, bus terminals, and border crossings. His photo has been distributed to every law enforcement agency in the state." She paused, studying me. "There is something else. We need to discuss Brittany." I looked up. She was arrested 2 hours ago at her mother's home in St. Paul. Lucas is safe with the grandmother. Brittany is being transported here for questioning. The interrogation room was small and cold. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Brittany sat at a metal table, her wrists in handcuffs, her face swollen from crying. She looked like she had not slept in days. When I walked in behind Vasquez, she crumbled. "Walter." She choked. "I am so sorry. I am so sorry." I sat across from her. Vasquez stood near the door, recording. "Tell me everything," I said. "No more lies." And she did. It came out in fragments, between sobs and gasps. Kevin had told her about Natalie 2 days after it happened. Told her Natalie was dangerous. That she was trying to steal my assets. That keeping her locked away was temporary. A few weeks at most. But the weeks became months, Brittany whispered. And then a year. And then 2. Every time I asked when he would let her go, he would get this look in his eyes. This cold, empty look. And he would say, "Do you want Lucas to grow up without a mother? Because I have done this before, and I will do it again." I clenched my fists beneath the table. "He threatened your son to keep you quiet." She nodded miserably. "I was terrified every single day. I wanted to tell you. Every time you asked about the noises in the basement, every time you mentioned Natalie's name, I wanted to scream the truth. But I kept seeing Lucas's face, and I could not risk it." Vasquez stepped forward. "Brittany, did you know about the carbon monoxide?" "No." Brittany's head snapped up. "I swear on my son's life, I did not know he was poisoning anyone. He told me Natalie was comfortable down there, that he was feeding her properly, that she had a heater and blankets. I never went down to check. He kept the basement locked and I never went down." Vasquez made a note. "Did you know Kevin's real identity? That he is Kyle Drayton?" Brittany's face went blank. "What?" Vasquez watched her carefully. "Your husband's real name is Kyle Drayton. He is the son of Frank Drayton, a convicted murderer who Walter sentenced in 2005. Kevin has been planning this since he was 18 years old." Brittany stared at Vasquez, then at me. Her mouth opened and closed. "No." She finally managed. "No. He told me his parents died in a car accident when he was a baby. He told me he grew up in foster care because he had no family. That is what he told me. For the first time, I almost believed her. The shock on her face was too raw, too complete to be performed. She had been another one of Kevin's victims, not as brutally as Natalie or Helen, but manipulated nonetheless. Used, controlled through fear and lies. Vasquez's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, then stepped out of the room. She returned 2 minutes later, her expression sharp. "Mr. Price, our financial forensics team has been digging into Kyle Drayton's records. We found something significant." She sat down and opened her tablet. Kyle Drayton owes $400,000 to an illegal gambling syndicate operating out of Stillwater. The same network connected to Frank Drayton inside the prison. Sports betting, online poker. He has been losing heavily since 2021. The debt has been compounding. She showed me transaction records. Numbers climbing. Threats in encrypted messages. The syndicate gave him a deadline. Vasquez continued. 60 days. That was in November. If he does not pay by the end of January, they threatened his family. Brittany, Lucas. He was desperate. Your estate is valued at approximately $10 million. If you died and Natalie was already gone, the inheritance would pass to Kevin as your adopted son and sole surviving heir. Everything clicked into place. 15 years of patience. But in the end, it was not just revenge that drove him. It was desperation. The gambling debts had forced his hand, accelerated his timeline, pushed him from slow poisoning to attempted murder. Vasquez closed the tablet. One more thing. Based on Natalie's testimony about Helen's death, we have obtained a court order to exhume your wife's remains. The analysis will take 48 hours. I nodded numbly. Vasquez's phone buzzed again. She read the message, and something shifted in her face. She looked at me. "We found Kevin's laptop," she said, "hidden in a floor safe in his garage. Our tech team cracked it an hour ago. There is a folder on the hard drive called Project Retribution." She paused. "Mr. Price, your son has been planning this since he was 18 years old, and he documented every single step." The FBI Minneapolis field office was a gray concrete building on Washington Avenue that looked like it had been designed to repel human emotion. Vasquez led me through 2 security checkpoints and up an elevator to a third-floor conference room. Agent Torres was already there. A compact man in his 40s with close-cropped hair and a face that gave nothing away. He stood when I entered and extended his hand. "Mr. Price, I am Special Agent Daniel Torres. I am leading the federal investigation into Kyle Drayton's activities. Please sit down." I sat. The table between us held a laptop, closed, with an evidence tag taped to its lid. Torres opened a manila folder first. "Before I show you the computer, I want to prepare you. What is on this device is disturbing. It is comprehensive, and it is deeply personal. Kyle Drayton did not simply commit crimes against your family. He documented them in detail over a period of 15 years. This was not impulsive. It was architectural." He opened the laptop and turned it toward me. The desktop was clean. A single folder sat in the center of the screen. Project Retribution. Torres double-clicked it. Inside were dozens of files. Documents, spreadsheets, photographs, videos, all meticulously organized into subfolders labeled by year. 2008, 2009, 2010, all the way to 2024. Torres opened the earliest file. A Word document dated March 15th, 2008. Kyle would have been 18 years old. The text filled the screen. I leaned forward and read. "Today I visited Dad at Stillwater. He told me everything. How Judge Walter Price sentenced him to 25 years for something that was not his fault. How Price destroyed our family. How Mom left because she could not handle the shame. How I ended up in foster care because one man decided my father's fate without knowing anything about us. Dad said the system took everything from him. He said someone needs to take everything from Price. He said it should be me. I told him I would do it, however long it takes. I will make Walter Price feel what Dad felt. I will take his family the way he took mine. And then I will take his money, his name, and his life. This is my promise. This is my purpose. I stopped reading. My vision had blurred. Torres waited a moment, then scrolled to another entry. This one dated June 2009, 3 months before Kevin walked into St. Andrew's Lutheran Church. Found the mentorship program at his church. Perfect entry point. He volunteers there every Sunday. I will present as a foster youth aging out of the system. Polite, hardworking, humble, grateful, everything he wants to see. I studied his court rulings for 6 months. I know exactly what kind of person he respects. I will become that person. Torres clicked to a subfolder labeled Correspondence. Emails. Dozens of them. Sent between a burner account and an address registered to Minnesota Correctional Facility Stillwater. Frank Drayton had been guiding his son every step of the way, coaching him on what to say, how to behave, when to push, and when to pull back. One email from 2014 read, "Be patient. Do not rush. The longer you wait, the deeper the trust. He needs to love you like a real son before you take anything. If he suspects even once, it is over. 15 years, 20 years, it does not matter. What matters is that when it is done, he loses everything." Torres closed the emails and opened a spreadsheet. The file name was Co-Schedule XLSX. Columns filled the screen. Date. Furnace runtime hours. Estimated CO concentration in parts per million. Target room. Expected timeline to incapacitation. Notes. The first entry read, November 1st, 2023. 6 hours. 30 parts per million. W bedroom. 90 to 120 days. Low dose introduction. Symptoms will mimic cognitive decline. No suspicion. The entries escalated week by week. By January 2024, the final rows read, January 10th, 14 hours. 150 plus parts per million. W bedroom plus N room. 7 to 14 days. Accelerated timeline. Gambling deadline January 31st. Both targets must be eliminated before month end. Inheritance secured. Father released 2030. Everything restored. I pushed back from the table. My stomach heaved. Torres slid a wastebasket toward me without comment. I gripped the table edge and forced myself to breathe. There is more, Torres said quietly. I know this is difficult, but you need to see it. He opened a video file. The timestamp read, September 2023. A night vision image filled the screen, green and gray. A small concrete room, and Natalie, curled on the cot, staring at the ceiling. She was thinner than when I had found her, but not yet skeletal. Her lips were moving, talking to herself, or praying. Kyle recorded these periodically, Torres said. We believe he sent them to Frank as proof of progress. There are 14 videos spanning 2 years. I could not watch another second. Close it, I said. Please. Torres closed the video and opened one final file. A photograph. Helen, lying in our bed, her hands folded across her chest, her face peaceful in death. The timestamp read November 9th, 2019. 6:18 a.m., 2 hours before Kyle called 911 to report that she had passed in her sleep. He took this picture before calling for help, Torres said. He kept it, like a trophy. I stared at my wife's face on that screen. At her closed eyes, her still lips, her gray skin. And I felt something inside me that went beyond rage. beyond grief. A cold, ancient fury that settled into my bones like iron. Torres closed the laptop. One more thing, Mr. Price. The exhumation results came back this morning. He slid a document across the table. Our forensic toxicologist found elevated levels of ethylene glycol in Helen's hair and bone tissue. The accumulation pattern indicates chronic exposure over approximately 8 months in 2019, consistent with repeated small doses ingested orally. Antifreeze, I said. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. Yes. Likely administered in a beverage over time. Tea. Coffee. Something she consumed regularly. The tea. The special blend Kevin brought her 3 times a week during her illness. Chamomile and valerian. Good for sleep, he said. Good for the brain, Torres continued. With this evidence, we are formally reclassifying Helen Price's death from cardiac arrest to homicide. Kyle Drayton will face first-degree murder charges in addition to the attempted murder and kidnapping charges already filed. I stared at the document. At the clinical language describing how my wife had been slowly poisoned to death by the man she had welcomed into her home and called her son. The last entry in Project Retribution was dated January 11th, 2024, 3 days before the furnace broke. Torres read it aloud. Timeline accelerating. W shows no suspicion. N weakening. Both eliminated by end of month. Inheritance secured. Father released. 2030. Debt cleared. Family restored. 15 years. Worth every day. He looked at me. Father. He meant Frank Drayton. I know, I said. My voice was hollow. Empty. He never meant me. I was never his father. I was his target. 5 days passed. 5 days of sitting beside Natalie's hospital bed watching her breathe, watching the color slowly return to her skin, watching the monitors tick upward in small increments that the nurses called encouraging. She slept most of the time. When she was awake, she held my hand and stared at the ceiling. Her eyes distant, processing 2 years of darkness in a world that suddenly had too much light. I barely left her room. I ate cafeteria food I could not taste. I dozed in the chair beside her bed and woke at every beep, every shift of the monitors. The nursing staff brought me pillows and blankets without being asked. They understood. On the morning of the 5th day, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost did not answer. Something made me pick up. The voice on the other end was calm, familiar, and it turned my blood to ice. Hello, Dad. I gripped the phone so hard the case creaked. My mouth went dry. Do not hang up, Kyle said. His voice was measured, unhurried. The same smooth cadence I had listened to across the dinner table for 15 years. I just want to talk. Where are you? I managed. He laughed softly. That does not matter. What matters is that I know where you are. Hennepin County Medical Center. 3rd floor. Room 314. Natalie is doing better, I hear. Color coming back. That is good. It would be a shame if her recovery was interrupted. I stood up from the chair, my legs unsteady. Natalie was asleep, her chest rising and falling in slow rhythm. I walked to the window and pressed my hand against the cold glass. What do you want, Kyle? A pause. When he spoke again, the amusement was gone. I want you to understand something, Walter. You took my father from me for 25 years. You sat behind your bench in your black robe, and you destroyed my family. My mother left. I went into the system. I was 3 years old. Do you know what happens to a 3-year-old in foster care? Do you have any idea? I did not respond. I gave you 15 years. Kyle continued. 15 years of playing the grateful son. 15 years of dad. And thank you. And I love you. You got more from me than my real father ever did. Consider it a gift. But you do not get to win this. You do not get to take everything from me and then take everything from me again. His voice hardened. I know where Lucas is. St. Paul. Elm Street. Your granddaughter-in-law's mother's house. Blue shutters. White fence. He plays in the backyard every afternoon around 3. My chest constricted. Lucas. 4 years old. Innocent. Playing in a backyard while a monster watched. If you are smart, Kyle said, you will convince the police to drop this. You will tell them it was a misunderstanding. You will make this go away. Because if you do not, I will make sure that little boy pays for his grandfather's mistakes. Just like I paid for mine. The line went dead. I stood motionless, the phone pressed against my ear, listening to silence. Then I called Vasquez. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hit the buttons. She answered on the second ring, and I told her everything, every word, every threat, every detail about Lucas. Vasquez was quiet for exactly 3 seconds. Then her voice came back sharp and hard. We are moving you and Natalie to a secure location within the hour. I am dispatching plainclothes officers to the grandmother's house in St. Paul immediately. Lucas will be protected. And Mr. Price, this call tells us something important. What? He is desperate. Desperate men make mistakes. And we are going to be ready when he makes his. Agent Torres and a woman I had not met before, Agent Rachel Morales, arrived 40 minutes later. They moved quickly and efficiently. Natalie was transferred by wheelchair to an unmarked van in the hospital's service entrance. I followed, hunched against the January wind, climbing into the back beside her. The safe house was a ground-floor apartment in a nondescript complex in Brooklyn Park. Reinforced door, blackout curtains. 2 agents stationed outside at all times. Torres walked us through the protocols. Do not answer the door unless you hear the phrase Northern Lights. If you need anything, use this phone only. He handed me a burner. Natalie sat in the wheelchair, wrapped in a blanket, watching everything with hollow eyes. When Torres left, she looked at me. He is going to come for us, she said quietly. He will not stop. He will not get the chance, I said, though the words felt like dust in my mouth. That evening, Torres called the burner phone. Mr. Price, we intercepted 2 individuals at the hospital, approximately 1 hour after you were moved. 2 men, mid-30s, with connections to Frank Drayton's network inside Stillwater. They were asking nurses about Natalie's room number. My blood went cold. They came for her. They did. But we were waiting. Both are in custody, and they are talking. Torres paused. One of them confirmed that Kyle Drayton is heading north, toward the Canadian border. They believe he is planning to cross at Rainy River into Ontario. Then stop him, I said. Border Patrol has been alerted. Checkpoints are active at every crossing between International Falls and Warroad. RCMP on the Canadian side is coordinating. If he tries to cross legally, we will intercept him. And if he does not cross legally, Torres hesitated. There are areas along the border that are difficult to patrol in winter. Dense forest, frozen waterways. It is possible to cross on foot if you know the terrain. I closed my eyes. Kyle was smart, methodical. 15 years of patient planning had proven that. If anyone could disappear into the Canadian wilderness in the middle of winter, it was him. Torres seemed to read my silence. We will find him, Mr. Price. He cannot run forever. But that night, lying on the thin mattress in the safe house, listening to Natalie's breathing in the next room, I could not sleep. Every creak of the building sounded like footsteps. Every gust of wind sounded like someone trying a door handle. And in the darkness, I kept hearing Kyle's voice. Calm. Measured. Certain. You do not get to win this. The call came the next morning. Torres, his voice tight. He crossed. Sometime overnight, through an unmonitored stretch near Rainy River. Footprints in the snow leading to the frozen river. Tracks on the other side disappearing into the tree line. RCMP is searching, but the area is vast. He is in Canada. I sat on the edge of the bed, the burner phone heavy in my hand. Kyle was gone. Again. And as long as he was free, none of us were safe. Not me. Not Natalie. Not Lucas. How? I asked. How does he keep getting away? He had help, Torres said. Frank Drayton's network extends outside the prison. People who owe favors. People who fear consequences. Kyle had a route planned. Supplies cached along the way. This was not improvised. It was prepared months in advance. Of course it was. Everything Kyle did was prepared months in advance. Years in advance. A lifetime in advance. I hung up and sat in silence, staring at the wall. Natalie appeared in the doorway, leaning against the frame. Her face was pale, but her eyes were sharp. He got away, she said. It was not a question. For now, I said. She crossed her arms, her jaw tight. Then we make sure there is no next time. 3 days after Kyle crossed into Canada, Brittany's lawyer called Vasquez. Kyle had made contact through an encrypted app. The message was short. 50,000. Cash. I will tell you where and when. If you do not bring it, Lucas pays. Torres brought the message to the safe house. We can use this, he said. Kyle needs money. His network is being dismantled. He is desperate enough to surface for $50,000. Brittany cooperates, agrees to meet, brings marked bills. When he shows up, we take him. Brittany agreed within the hour. I will do whatever it takes, she said, her eyes red and raw. He threatened my son. I am done being afraid of him. The reply went out that evening. Kyle's response came 6 hours later. 2 words and an address. St. Andrews. Wednesday. 3 p.m. Something cold moved through me when I read those words. St. Andrew's Lutheran Church. The place where I first met Kevin Price. Where he sat beside me every Sunday for 15 years. Where I walked him down the aisle. Where we held Helen's funeral. He chose it on purpose. Of course he did. Torres assembled the operation over 48 hours. 12 agents positioned inside and around the church. A surveillance van 2 blocks east where I would watch the feeds. A wire sewn into Brittany's coat. You do not need to be here, Torres said. I need to see it end. I told him. At 2:45 on Wednesday, Brittany walked through the front doors of St. Andrews. Through the surveillance feeds, I watched her move down the center aisle, past the stained glass windows, past the baptismal font, and sit in the 3rd pew, our pew. She set the briefcase beside her and folded her trembling hands. The church was quiet. A woman reading a hymnal in the back. A man sweeping near the altar. A couple 3 rows behind Brittany. All FBI. 3 o'clock. 3:01. 3:02. The side door opened. A figure stepped through. Baseball cap pulled low. Dark sunglasses. Winter jacket with the collar turned up. He walked directly toward the 3rd pew and sat beside Brittany. You came alone. His voice through the wire. Not a question. Yes, Brittany said. Where is the money? She pushed the briefcase toward him. He unzipped it, rifled through the marked bills, checked for tracking devices. Zipped it closed. Kyle. Promise me you will leave Lucas alone. Promise me you will disappear. He turned toward her. Even through the grainy feed, I could see his smile. I do not make promises, Brittany. You should know that by now. Torres spoke into his radio. Go. Everything happened at once. The woman with the hymnal drew a weapon. The janitor dropped his broom. Agents poured from every entrance. Kyle shoved the pew forward into Brittany and bolted toward the main doors. He made it 4 steps before Agent Morales appeared in his path. Badge raised. Kyle veered left. An agent behind the organ hit him low, driving him into the stone floor. His head struck the base of the altar steps. 2 more agents pinned him. Handcuffs clicked shut, the sound echoing through the vaulted ceiling. 15 seconds. It was over in 15 seconds. I crossed the frozen parking lot and climbed the church steps. Inside, Kyle was on his feet between two agents, blood trickling from his forehead. His sunglasses were gone, and for the first time in weeks, I saw his face. He looked the same. That was the worst part. The same dark hair, the same jaw, the same eyes. He did not look like a monster. He looked like my son. Then he saw me. His lips curled into that smile. "You sentenced my father to 25 years, he said calmly. "I gave you 15 good ones before I took it all back. You should be grateful, old man." The agents shoved him toward the door. He twisted his neck, keeping his eyes locked on mine. "Every single day was worth it," he called back. "Every I love you, every hug, every prayer in this church. All of it was for my father, never for you." The doors closed behind him. The sanctuary fell silent. I stood alone in the aisle and felt something I had not expected. Not rage, not satisfaction, just exhaustion. A weariness that came from reaching the end of something that should never have begun. I walked to the third pew and sat down, folded my hands, bowed my head, and for the first time since this nightmare started, I prayed. Not for justice, not for vengeance, just for the strength to survive what came next. The Hennepin County Courthouse stood against an April sky washed clean by weeks of spring rain. Walter and I climbed the granite steps together. Natalie walked beside me slowly, her cane clicking against each step. She had gained 12 pounds in 3 months. Her hair was cut short, clean, professional. But her hands still trembled when she gripped the railing, and she flinched at sudden sounds. Inside, courtroom 4 smelled of old wood and recycled air. Dark oak paneling lined the walls. 2 flags hung behind the judge's bench, Minnesota's North Star and the Stars and Stripes. The gallery was packed. Reporters, families, strangers who had followed the case in the news. Vasquez sat in the second row. Sam Rivera was there too, somewhere in the back. I had not asked him to come. He came anyway. Natalie and I took our seats in the front row behind the prosecution table. I reached over and squeezed her hand. She squeezed back. Her jaw set, her eyes fixed on the side door. It opened at exactly 9 o'clock. 2 bailiffs led Kyle into the courtroom. Orange jumpsuit. Wrists and ankles shackled. His hair had grown longer, falling across his forehead the same way it had the first day I met him at St. Andrews. He walked with his chin up, his expression blank. No fear, no shame, nothing. His eyes swept the room, found me, held my gaze for exactly 2 seconds, then moved on, as if I were a stranger he had passed on the street. "All rise," the bailiff called. Judge Patricia Okafor entered, a woman in her 60s with close-cropped silver hair and reading glasses perched on her nose. She had presided over capital cases for 20 years. Her reputation was iron. "The state of Minnesota versus Kyle Michael Drayton," she announced. "Counsel, are we ready?" Prosecutor Thomas Webb rose, a tall man with a shaved head and the deliberate movements of someone who had spent his career making juries pay attention. "Yes, Your Honor." Defense attorney Catherine Holt nodded. "Ready, Your Honor." Webb stepped to the center of the courtroom and faced the jury. 12 citizens who would decide whether the last 15 years of my life had been a crime or a family. "Ladies and gentlemen," Webb began, his voice filling the room. "This is a case about patience, about a man who spent 15 years building a lie so perfect that no one, not a retired judge, not his wife, not his daughter, ever suspected the truth. Kyle Drayton did not snap. He did not act in passion or desperation. He executed a plan that he began writing when he was 18 years old. Webb outlined the charges. Count 1. First-degree murder of Helen Price in 2019 through deliberate poisoning with ethylene glycol administered over 8 months. Count 2. Attempted murder of Walter Price and Natalie Price through carbon monoxide exposure in 2023 and 24. Count 3. kidnapping and false imprisonment of Natalie Price from December 2022 to January 2024. He paused, letting the weight of it settle over the jury. The evidence will show that Kyle Drayton is not a man who lost control. He is a man who never had any to begin with. He infiltrated a family, earned their love, and then systematically destroyed them. For money, for revenge, and for the approval of his biological father, a convicted murderer serving 25 years in Stillwater. The trial moved through its first day with the precision of a machine. Webb called Sam Rivera first. Sam described the night of the furnace failure calmly and clearly. The sabotaged heat exchanger, the carbon monoxide readings, the hidden wall, the steel door with 4 padlocks. His discovery of Natalie barely alive behind it. On cross-examination, Holt tried to suggest Sam had contaminated the scene. Sam shut her down with technical precision that left the jury nodding. Vasquez followed. She walked the jury through the forensic evidence methodically. The laptop, Project Retribution, the emails between Kyle and Frank Drayton, the CO schedule, the photograph of Helen taken before Kyle called 911, the ethylene glycol findings from the exhumation. Then, on the second day, they called Natalie. She gripped the railing as she took the oath. Her hand was steady, but her voice wavered on the first word. She sat in the witness chair, small and still, and Webb asked her to describe her captivity. She did not look at Kyle. She looked at the jury. "I was locked in a concrete room for 753 days, she said. Her voice was quiet, but clear. There was no window, no light, except when he opened the door. He fed me once a day, a bowl of something through a slot at the bottom. Sometimes it was soup. Sometimes it was nothing but rice and water. There was a bucket in the corner for everything else. No toilet, no sink, no shower." She paused. The courtroom was silent. I screamed for the first 3 months. Every day, every night. I pounded on the door until my knuckles bled. I kicked the walls until my feet swelled. No one came. Kevin would turn on music, upstairs, loud. Or he would run the washing machine, and my father, who was sleeping 1 floor above me, never heard a thing. Her eyes glistened, but she did not cry. She had spent 2 years crying in the dark. She was done. After a year, I stopped screaming. I stopped hoping. I just waited to die. And then, 2 months before the end, the headaches started. The nausea. I could not stand without falling. He came down one day and told me what was happening. Carbon monoxide. He said he was doing the same thing to my father. He said we would both be gone by the end of January, and no one would ever know. She finally looked at Kyle. He stared back at her without expression. "He told me it was justice," Natalie said. "He said his father had waited 20 years for this moment, and that every day I suffered was a day earned." Webb nodded gently. "Thank you, Natalie." No further questions. Holt stood for cross-examination, hesitated, then sat back down. "No questions, Your Honor." Then it was my turn. I walked to the stand on legs that felt borrowed from someone else. I placed my hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. The whole truth. As if the truth could ever be contained in words. Webb asked me to describe my relationship with Kyle. I took a breath. "I met him in October of 2009, I said. He was 20 years old. I was a retired judge looking for purpose. He was a young man who seemed to need a father. I gave him my name, my home, my trust, my love. For 15 years, I believed he was my son." My voice cracked. He sat at my table every evening. He prayed beside me every Sunday. He held my hand at my wife's funeral and told me he loved me. And the entire time, he was planning to take everything I had and everyone I loved. And he did. I looked at Kyle. For the first time since the trial began, something flickered in his eyes. Not remorse. Recognition, maybe. That I finally saw him clearly. I will never forgive myself for not seeing it sooner, I said. But I will never stop being grateful that I found out before it was too late. Webb nodded. Thank you, Mr. Price. Holt stood again, paused, then quietly. No cross, Your Honor. On the third day, the prosecution called its final witness. The courtroom stirred when Webb announced the name. Frank Michael Drayton, inmate number 47291, Minnesota Correctional Facility, Stillwater. A large screen was wheeled to the front of the courtroom. The video link connected, and Frank Drayton's face filled the frame. He was 62 years old, thick-necked, with a shaved head and deep-set eyes that reminded me, with a sickening jolt, of Kyle. He wore an orange jumpsuit and sat in a bare concrete room with a guard visible behind him. Judge Okafor addressed him. Mr. Drayton, you have agreed to testify under oath via video link. Do you understand that anything you say can and will be used in these proceedings? I understand, Frank said. His voice was a low rumble. He looked directly into the camera, directly at me. Webb approached the screen. Mr. Drayton, did you instruct your son Kyle Drayton to infiltrate the Price family? Frank's jaw tightened. I told my son the truth. That Walter Price destroyed our family. That he sentenced me to 25 years for something that should have been 10. That my wife left because she could not handle the shame. That Kyle grew up in foster homes because one man in a black robe decided he knew better than God. Webb pressed. Did you specifically instruct Kyle to gain Walter Price's trust with the intention of harming him and taking his assets? Frank leaned forward. I told my boy to get what was owed to us. Price took 25 years of my life. He took my son's childhood. He took everything. Someone had to balance the scales. And the emails. Webb continued. The correspondence recovered from Kyle's laptop. You wrote to him year after year guiding his actions. Be patient. The longer you wait, the deeper the trust. Those are your words. Frank did not deny it. I gave my son advice. A father's advice. The same way Price gave advice to Kyle when he pretended to be his father. The difference is, I never lied about who I was. Webb turned to the jury. No further questions. Holt rose for cross. Mr. Drayton, do you take responsibility for the death of Helen Price? Frank's expression did not change. I never told Kyle to hurt anyone. I told him to take back what was ours. How he did it was his choice. So you deny instructing him to poison Helen Price with ethylene glycol. I deny everything except loving my son, Frank said flatly, and wanting justice for what was done to us. Holt sat down. The screen went dark. The courtroom was silent for a long moment. I could feel the jury's eyes on me, on Natalie, beside me, on the empty space where Helen should have been sitting. Webb delivered his closing argument standing directly in front of the jury box. His voice was measured, but fierce. This is not a case about a broken system or a desperate man, he said. This is a case about premeditation on a scale most of us cannot comprehend. Kyle Drayton spent 15 years becoming someone's son so that he could destroy them from the inside. He poisoned a woman with antifreeze for 8 months. He locked her daughter in a concrete cell for 2 years. He pumped carbon monoxide into an old man's bedroom while that man slept, and he documented every step with pride. He paused. Frank Drayton calls this justice. I call it what it is. Evil. Patient. Calculated. Unrepentant. Evil. Holt's closing was brief. My client is guilty, she said. The evidence is clear. But I ask you to consider context. Kyle Drayton was a child failed by every system meant to protect him. His father was taken. His mother vanished. He spent 15 years in foster care because of a sentence handed down by the man sitting in this courtroom. That does not excuse his actions, but it explains them. I ask for the court's consideration in sentencing. Judge Okafor turned to Kyle. Mr. Drayton, do you wish to make a statement before the jury deliberates? Kyle stood. His shackles clinked against the table as he rose. He turned and faced me. Not the jury. Not the judge. Me. I would do it again, he said. His voice was steady, clear. Every single day. Every lie. Every smile. Every time I called you Dad and watched you believe it. I would do all of it again. The courtroom froze. My only regret, Kyle continued, is that the furnace broke 3 weeks too early. You were supposed to die in your sleep, Walter. Quietly. Peacefully. The way your wife did. And no one would have questioned it. Just another old man whose heart gave out in winter. He smiled. But even this is not a loss. Because you will spend the rest of your life knowing that every memory you have of me is a lie. Every happy moment. Every proud moment. Every time you thought you were loved. None of it was real. And that, Walter, is my father's justice. Judge Okafor's voice cut through the silence like a blade. That is enough, Mr. Drayton. Sit down. Kyle sat. Still smiling. The jury deliberated for 3 hours and 12 minutes. When they returned, the foreperson stood. A middle-aged woman with steady hands and a voice that did not waver. On count 1, first-degree murder of Helen Price. We find the defendant guilty. On count 2, attempted murder of Walter Price and Natalie Price. We find the defendant guilty. On count 3, kidnapping and false imprisonment of Natalie Price. We find the defendant guilty. Natalie's hand tightened around mine. I heard her exhale. A sound like something heavy finally being set down. Judge Okafor addressed Kyle. Kyle Michael Drayton, you are hereby sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for count 1. You will serve an additional 25 years consecutive for counts 2 and 3. She turned to address the record. Additionally, Frank Michael Drayton will face separate charges of conspiracy to commit murder, for which the maximum additional sentence is 15 years. The bailiffs moved in. Kyle stood, shackles rattling. As they turned him toward the door, he twisted one last time. His eyes found the gallery behind us, and he shouted, "Tell Lucas the truth. Tell him his real grandfather is Frank Drayton. Tell him who his family really is. Tell him his father was a soldier, not a criminal." The door closed behind him. The echo of his voice faded into the high ceiling. The courtroom sat in stunned silence. Natalie leaned against my shoulder. Her body was shaking, but her voice was steady when she whispered, "It is over, Dad." I put my arm around her and held her close. I wanted to believe her, but Kyle's words hung in the air like smoke. Every memory you have of me is a lie. I knew those words would live inside me for the rest of my life, a poison of their own kind, slower than carbon monoxide, slower than ethylene glycol, but just as deliberate. We stood together and walked out of the courtroom into the April sunlight. The air was cool and clean. Birds sang in the trees along the courthouse plaza. Spring in Minneapolis. The season of things returning to life. Natalie stopped on the steps and looked at me. "What do we do now, Dad?" I took a breath, felt the sun on my face, felt my daughter's hand in mine. "We live," I said. "That is what we do. We live." 2 years passed. Not quickly. Not easily. But they passed. I learned that healing is not a straight line. It is a thing that moves in circles, doubling back on itself when you least expect it. Some mornings I woke up, and the first thought in my mind was Kevin's smile across the breakfast table. And the grief hit me fresh as the day I found out. Other mornings I woke up and thought of nothing but the sound of Lucas laughing in the next room, and those were the mornings that kept me going. Natalie's recovery was measured in small victories. The first time she slept through the night without screaming. The first time she ate a full meal without her hands shaking. The first time she walked outside alone, without me or a therapist beside her, and stood in the sunlight with her face tilted toward the sky, like someone relearning what warmth felt like. She gained 40 pounds in the first year. Cut her hair short. Started therapy 3 times a week. Then twice. Then once. By the second spring after the trial, she had taken a job at a nonprofit in Minneapolis that worked with survivors of domestic captivity. She answered hotline calls. She sat with women in hospital rooms. She told them her story when they needed to hear that survival was possible. I sold the house in Adena. Could not look at it anymore. Could not walk past the basement door without feeling my knees go weak. I bought a small 2-bedroom apartment in downtown Minneapolis, close to the hospital, close to Natalie's new office, close to Lucas's school. Lucas. He was 6 now. A bright, curious boy with dark hair and wide blue eyes that still reminded me painfully of Brittany. He asked about his father sometimes. Not often, but enough. The first time, he was sitting at the kitchen table drawing with crayons. "Grandpa," he said without looking up, "where is my daddy?" I set down my coffee and sat beside him. "Your daddy made some very bad choices," I said carefully. "Choices that hurt people. And because of those choices, he has to stay somewhere far away for a very long time." Lucas considered this with the gravity only a child can muster. "Is he in timeout?" "Something like that. A very long timeout." He nodded, apparently satisfied, and went back to his drawing. A house with a yellow sun. 4 stick figures. Me, Natalie, Lucas, and a smaller figure with wings floating above the roof. "That is Grandma Helen," he said. "Aunt Natalie told me she watches us from heaven." I reached over and touched his hair. "She does, buddy. She absolutely does." Brittany was serving 8 years at the Minnesota Correctional Facility in Shakopee. I drove there once a month. Not for her sake. For Lucas's. He needed to know his mother had not abandoned him, even if she had failed him in every other way. The visiting room was always cold. Brittany always looked smaller than the last time. Her hair had gone gray at the temples. She cried every visit for the first 5 minutes. Then composed herself and asked about Lucas, his school, his friends, what he was eating, whether he was sleeping well. On my most recent visit, she had looked at me with red-rimmed eyes and said, "Walter, I know I do not deserve your forgiveness. I know what I allowed to happen. But thank you for bringing him to see me. Thank you for not letting him forget." I had looked at her for a long moment before responding. "When you get out, Lucas will be 14. He will need his mother. You will have a chance to be someone different. Do not waste it." She nodded, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. "I will not. I promise." I did not know if I believed her. But I believed that people deserved the chance to try. In the fall of that second year, I established the Price Family Foundation, a small nonprofit, funded by a portion of my retirement savings. Its mission was simple: education and support for families affected by manipulation, coercive control, and hidden abuse. We partnered with shelters, churches, and community centers across the Twin Cities. I gave talks, told my story to rooms full of strangers, who sometimes became less strange by the end. I spoke at St. Andrew's once, stood at the same pulpit where Pastor Lindgren had introduced me to Kevin 15 years earlier. The sanctuary was full. I told them everything: the adoption, the trust, the lies, the basement. "Helen." When I finished, a woman in the 3rd row raised her hand. She was maybe 50, with tired eyes and a nervous energy about her. "How do you know?" she asked. "How do you know when someone is not who they say they are?" I thought about it for a long moment. "You might not," I admitted. "Some people are very good at pretending. But pay attention to the things that do not add up, the doors that are always locked, the questions that are never answered, the instinct in your gut that something is wrong, even when everyone around you says everything is fine. Trust that instinct." I did not, and it almost cost me everything. On a Saturday morning in May, I drove Natalie and Lucas to Lakewood Cemetery. We walked together along the winding path, Lucas holding my hand on one side and Natalie on the other. The grass was green and new, the trees budding with spring growth. Helen's headstone was near the back, beneath a young maple we had planted the year after her death. Helen Marie Price, 1952 to 2019. Beloved wife and mother, taken too soon. Natalie knelt beside the headstone, her hand resting on the cool granite. "We made it, Mom," she whispered. "We are still here." Lucas knelt beside her. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his jacket pocket and placed it carefully against the base of the stone. A drawing. A house with a sun above it and 4 stick figures holding hands underneath a rainbow. "That is us," he said. "You, me, Grandpa, and Grandma in heaven. She is the one with the wings." I picked him up and held him against my chest. His small arms wrapped around my neck. His heartbeat thumped against mine, quick and strong and full of life. We had lost so much. Helen, 15 years. Natalie's freedom, our peace of mind, our ability to trust without fear. We would never get those things back. But standing there, the 3 of us together in the spring sunlight, I realized we had not lost everything. We still had each other. And that was enough to start again. Looking back now, standing on the other side of this nightmare with the sun on my face and my family beside me, I want to leave you with something. Not advice, exactly. Not wisdom. Just the truth as I have come to understand it after 72 years of living and 2 years of learning how to live again. Trust is the most beautiful thing we give each other. It is also the most dangerous. I do not say that to make you afraid. I say it because I spent 15 years offering my trust like an open hand, never once considering that the person receiving it might use it as a weapon. I loved without question. I believed without evidence. And when the small voice inside me whispered that something was wrong, I silenced it. Because doubt felt like betrayal. Because questioning someone you love felt like a failure of faith. But here is what I have learned. Protecting the people you love sometimes means asking the questions they do not want to answer. It means paying attention to the doors that stay locked, the stories that do not quite add up, the instinct in your chest that tightens when everyone around you says, "Relax, everything is fine." That instinct is not paranoia. It is not distrust. It is the quiet voice of God telling you to look closer. And I wish more than anything that I had listened. I do not tell you this story to make you suspicious of your family. Most people are exactly who they say they are. Most love is genuine. Most trust is well placed. But the ones who deceive, the ones who wear love like a costume and patience like armor, they count on your silence. They count on your unwillingness to look behind the curtain. They count on the fact that good people do not want to believe that evil can live in their own house, sit at their own table, and call them by name. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Do not wait for tragedy to force your eyes open the way I did. I spent a long time blaming myself for not seeing it, for not hearing the sounds beneath my floor, for not asking why a 20-year-old boy with no family chose me out of everyone in this city to love. That guilt nearly destroyed me. Some days it still whispers to me in the dark. Tells me I should have known. Tells me I failed the people I loved most. But I have learned something else in these 2 years. Something harder and more important than vigilance. I have learned that forgiveness, the real kind, the kind that heals rather than the kind that simply forgets, begins with forgiving yourself. I could not have known what was hidden behind those walls. I could not have seen through 15 years of perfect performance. No one could. And spending the rest of my life punishing myself for being human would be giving that man one final victory. A victory I refuse to hand him. God does not ask us to be omniscient. He asks us to be present, to love with open eyes, to protect with courage. And when we fail, because we will fail, He asks us to rise, to rebuild, to find the grace in beginning again. I have found that grace in the small things. A grandchild's laughter, a daughter's strength, a spring morning at a graveside, where I can finally speak to my wife without choking on guilt. This story is not about revenge. I know the title might suggest otherwise. But the truth is, the best revenge against someone who tried to destroy you is not anger. It is not hatred. It is not spending your remaining years consumed by what was taken. The best revenge is survival. It is choosing to live fully in the space that was meant to be your grave. It is holding your family close and refusing to let betrayal become the defining chapter of your life. Every night before I go to sleep, I say a prayer. Not for justice. Justice has been served. Not for understanding. Some things are beyond understanding. I pray for the strength to love again without armor, to trust again without naivety, to be open without being blind. And I pray for you, for anyone listening who has felt the cold hand of betrayal close around their throat, for anyone who has been manipulated, controlled, silenced, or made to feel that their instincts were wrong. You are not wrong. You are not crazy. And you are not alone. God places people in our lives to teach us, to challenge us, and sometimes to show us who we really are when everything is stripped away. I lost my wife. I nearly lost my daughter. I lost 15 years to a lie. But what I found on the other side of that darkness was something I did not expect. I found that I am stronger than I knew. That my daughter is braver than I imagined. That a 6-year-old boy can teach a 72-year-old man what hope looks like, drawn in crayon on a piece of construction paper. If this story touched your heart, if it made you think about the people in your life, if it reminded you to listen to that quiet voice inside you, then I am grateful. I would be honored if you would share your thoughts in the comments below. Tell me what you took from this. Tell me about a time you trusted your instincts. Or just tell me you are here. That is enough. If you have not already, please consider subscribing to this channel. Every new member helps us reach someone who might need to hear a story like this at exactly the right moment. And if you know someone, a friend, a parent, a neighbor, who might be living in a situation that feels wrong but looks fine from the outside, share this with them. Sometimes a story is the thing that finally gives someone permission to ask the hard question. Thank you for staying with me until the end. I know this was long. I know it was heavy. But some stories need to be told in full, because the truth does not fit in a headline. I want to acknowledge that this narrative contains fictionalized elements crafted for educational and entertainment purposes. Any resemblance to real individuals or specific events is unintentional, but the underlying message about trust, about vigilance, about the courage it takes to protect yourself and the people you love, that is as real as it gets. God bless you. Take care of each other. And remember, you are stronger than you think. You are braver than you feel. And you are never, ever alone.